What's up, everybody? We are back. It's Rip City Real Talk. Craig Moshkow, Anthony Blaylock, and this is going to be the biggest off-season episode I think we've had yet. We're going to go through a lot of stuff, but before we do, I want to remind everybody, please subscribe, like, share, follow, all of those things on this podcast. We've been growing like crazy, and 2021 is about to be our year. So with that, real quick, I want to go through some stuff, but first I got to toss it over to my co-host here. How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right, buddy. Good to see you. I'm glad we finally put off the free agency stuff. We're getting it done just in the nick of time. It is Sunday night, so nothing has happened as of this podcast and episode. By the time we get it uploaded, there is a chance that some smaller moves may be made. So don't bite our heads off too much for that.
Yeah.
But we're still going to talk about some of the things that we're going to predict the Blazers may do, what we want them to do, all that fun stuff.
Mhm.
We're also going to touch on Summer League today, just a little bit, just a tiny little bit. Go over the the one draft pick, and then obviously the two-way contract that we gave to an individual. We'll talk about those guys, what we think they're going to bring to the team. It's going to be a weird era to kind of go into that because Stotts was never a rookie guy. We don't know what's going to happen, obviously, with Billups. I still don't imagine these guys will get a lot of run, but we'll talk about them. And then, yeah, just going to dive right into free agency, some of the names and positions that we think we need, where the roster is kind of at right now and all that fun stuff. So excited to do that with you as usual. Also, if anybody runs out of time on this or just doesn't want to watch the video, we are going to be on all the podcast sites. So Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever you listen to, chances are we are probably on there. So you can always download and subscribe to those and listen to us that way. But yeah, we appreciate the support so far. How you doing?
Excellent, my friend. Did a good, relaxing day today. I haven't done anything. I didn't look at my phone. I didn't really do anything. I just played with the kids all day, and now I'm ready to record this bad boy at 7 p.m. Pacific time. We have a lot to go through. We can talk about the Olympics a little bit, but I think that we probably need to focus mostly on draft and free agency. And then there's one other thing I have to ask you about real quick, fresh off the pod. I know you're going to love
Okay.
it, dude. The first
All
thing that
right.
happened right after we recorded the podcast last week was Derek Jones. Derek Jones also.
Golly.
Your boy. Can I order you a Derek Jones Jr. jersey? You're so mad right now.
I'm not mad. All right. I'm not mad. I just, geez, trade him. Fine. Get that. It's an expiring contract at 10 mil.
Yeah, 9.7.
You know, I don't care for him. It could have been Stotts last year. I would love to be proven wrong. I mean, don't get me wrong. I want to be wrong, but I still don't care for him. I think there's other options that were out there. Some of the wings that are much cheaper, I liked more in the free agency market. I don't think he's not going to start. Chances are, especially if we bring back Norman Powell, which we'll discuss a little bit more. We've touched on that quite a bit lately, but still. So whatever. It's an expiring contract. When you start talking about like matching contracts and things like that, and adding them to a package with CJ to entice somebody with a young defender, might help you make some of those moves a little easier. And that worst case, he's still a $10 million contract that you could trade to somebody at the trade deadline for an expiring deal that'll entice somebody to maybe give you somebody back if you're in a better position. You start thinking about playoffs and all that. So it is what it is. I mean, it's good to have the assets. I'm not mad at having the asset. I really wish we wouldn't be going into luxury tax for a guy like that. He's not my favorite player to be spending another $10 million on and having that increase that threshold, especially since, we don't know what the future is going to hold with Dame and all those different things as we've discussed.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite, but whatever. I mean, as long as it doesn't affect some of the other moves that we make in free agency, then I'm all for it. And I'm willing to see if he can go out there, and I don't even need him to score, but he was not great on defense, in my opinion. He had a defensive rating of 114, which is pretty bad, 50-something among small forwards, pretty bad for a guy that was supposed to be brought in for defensive roles primarily. I mean, offensive stuff aside, so not great, but whatever. We did. So he opted in. That's very true.
We predicted that, right? We knew he was going to, and we knew Norm was going to opt out. We called both of those.
Well, we knew, he wasn't going to pass up the money. I think we knew for a while. I mean, when he started selling his home, we kind of questioned it, and we discussed it, but I don't think there was ever a true inkling that he was going to pass up $9 million, especially not after playing. I mean, who's going to go out there and give him money? Probably not a lot of people, since he didn't get to showcase what he can do. I don't think anybody was going to give him more than $10 million, at least exactly not this year, not with everybody kind of strapped. So good for him. Everything is a balance. So as he opts in, we officially today, I mean, we already pretty much knew this was official. We've talked about it, but it happened officially today that Zach Collins did not receive his qualifying offer. So he's gone. He's an official unrestricted free agent.
Yep.
I've already heard teams jumping at him. Spurs, Thunder are two teams that I've heard.
Yeah, I heard Golden
that are already
State a little bit.
Yeah, Golden State.
Wouldn't
There's been
that
a
be
couple
weird?
teams that would like a backup center, I think, that would take a chance on him for cheap, see if he can stay healthy. And honestly, I hope that Zach does. I like Zach. I would welcome him back to Portland at a veteran minimum deal. Like, if he would be willing to take $2 million, if he can stay healthy. I mean, I'm not a guy that I would be mad at getting back. Not my number one choice, but again, I think he has something that he can bring to some teams. So hopefully that works out for him.
Yeah, that was perfect timing to hit that too. So I think Zach's going to walk. I think he's going to sign a small 2 or 3 year deal with some team that wants to take a shot on a younger guy who's had a lot of ankle, shoulder, all kinds of problems. Hopefully he can get healthy, but yeah, we'll see. So I wanted to hit on those things, and then we can jump into draft night if you want.
Yeah, I mean, that's the last major event that went on. Team USA won, so they're still rolling. We'll, as you kind of put out earlier, we'll discuss the Olympics and Dame's performance in the Olympics when that's all done. We'll kind of see how that goes. We start getting some of the more intense games. But for now, draft is the last major thing that went on. So we did trade up to 43. We didn't trade up. We traded into the draft at 43 for a 2026 second round pick with the Pelicans. Mm-hmm. So sure, you didn't give up really anything. It's kind of a bummer to give up a future pick to get a pick now for the same situation, but whatever. I mean, second round picks are second round picks. Every once in a while you get a gem, but not too often. I don't think this guy's going to do much for us, but we did draft Greg Brown the third, right? The third. So the third. So I know you did a little bit of research on him. What do you got for me?
Yeah, I mean, very, very standard as far as my research goes. Just kind of, I'm going to give you a flat out. He's 6'9".
Okay.
He has massive hands, and he's really athletic. He was highly recruited out of high school. He does not have a very polished game, and he obviously can't shoot. So when you're looking at a guy who's 6'9", you have to hope that he develops into two things. Number one is a very solid, versatile defender, because you're hoping that athletic profile can translate onto the defensive end. The other thing that you hope he can shoot. And that's one of the things I think with Derrick Jones Jr. So Greg Brown is in the same archetype as a rim-running Derrick Jones Jr., but he's got to improve defensively and show that he can stop people on that end of the floor. The other big thing is Derrick Jones, when he even left wide open, has been a porous three-point shooter. He did not take advantage of open opportunities last year, and I think that's one of the main reasons that Stotts and Neil O'Shea went out and got Powell, and Stotts benched him, is because he couldn't do his job and hit open threes. I'm with you. Even in a non-Stotts era, so with Chauncey as a head coach, I don't think we're going to see meaningful Greg Brown the third minutes this year. But the dude has ridiculous athleticism. And when you're talking about a second-round pick, you're usually not talking about a contributor who's going to jump in and start or play big minutes in the first year. Gary Trent Jr. I mean, you're looking at developmental players. You're looking at players that you need to take 2 to 3 years. They need to get NBA experience in camp and in practice, and you just pray that those guys don't have to play their first year. So Greg Brown has really high upside with almost no risk, and I think it's at a position that's completely needed, which is that athletic two-way forward.
Yeah, I think it fits a lot of Neil's MO the last couple of years. I mean, when you look at the Nasir Little draft pick, I think Little developed or came in with a much better shot, or at least he's developed a very good shot for his position, which I think is going to be big in terms of earning minutes going forward. But those are the type of guys that in the late first, early second, you just can't have enough of. Derrick Jones, we went out and got him. Mo Harkless a couple of years ago. You look at all these guys that are just athletic guys that they're not known to be offensive juggernauts, but can come in and you hope that you can develop them to do just enough to use that athleticism, especially when you put it the defensive side of things, to really have them be able to come in and play that kind of defense. I mean, we're not going to get a Bridges or any of these guys that you see on some of these bigger teams, Pascal Siakam. We're probably not going to get them in the second round, but it's never bad enough to have these athletic power forward type players on your bench because of injuries and things like that. I mean, think Jalen Horde, think some of these guys that we've had. Wenyen Gabriel is another good example. Like, think of some of these guys that have just been springy athletic players that you ended up needing because of injuries, and they were able to come in and hold your own, at least in the regular season. Yeah, good for them. I'm not mad at it. I think it's a good pick for where you're at. I don't think there was much else you could have done in that draft at that point.
Mm.
And if you have to give up an asset for a guy like that, then great. Another forward who's athletic, sure. Can't have enough of them.
Yep, we really can't. And the other thing is, so I understand people are complaining about like, okay, so he's a rim running athletic guy, and we have not been able to unlock that archetype in years past when it comes to Derek Jones Jr. But you need guys like that. And God forbid the Dame era ends and the CJ era ends and we have to move on. If this team needs to reset, they're going to need youth and athleticism to do that. And they're going to need high upside guys in order to do that. So it works from two standpoints. It works from like you can develop him in 2 years to be a starter and be cheap. And it can also work in a reset where you have to trade Dame for assets. This guy can be someone that you can build with and hope that you can develop. So I don't know, man. It's fine. I was fine with it. I didn't expect us to do anything but buy a cash considerations pick. So it makes total sense.
Yeah, I would have liked to see him do a little bit more in college. His college career wasn't great.
Yes, that's
which
true.
is probably honestly why he slipped so far in the draft
Yes.
in the first place.
Yep.
But again, project guy, great. The other move that we did was we not got Trendon Watford. He played for LSU, kind of a 17, 16 point a game guy, about 7 to 8 rebounds. And that was it. So he was just again, same type of thing. A guy that can go out, he's 6'9", he's gonna have a good wingspan, he's gonna be able to play defense and do all these things. He didn't have very good collegiate stats when it came to passing the ball. The videos that I've seen, he doesn't look like he has terrible handle. However, it doesn't look like he's a great passer. When I say that, it's going to impact his offense. He was well below 30% from three. His free throw shooting was in like the 60s. Granted, this is all college, so these things can be developed and worked on. But as a guy coming in on a two-way contract, I wouldn't expect to see much out of him. He probably won't get much playing time with us, and if he does, for being a rim runner and one of those guys is going to be able to score a lot of down low scoring. He had a pretty good game. I think it was in the tournament where he had like 30 points.
Yeah,
and that's great. But if you watch it, I know some of the people have already called this out. They didn't look overly impressive. I mean, it was just a lot of putbacks, like underneath the basket stuff, which is fine, but no shooting abilities and no passing abilities. So, he's going to be kind of one of those guys that as you try out and you put in the camp, he may not even make the team long term. Who knows? He's a two-way guy, so he'll be here for now. But I'm all for it. Again, you're getting athletic forwards who are going to have good wingspans come in here, and you're going to hope that some of them hit and that you can do something long term with them. So.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's complaining in Blazerland, and it's nice to see us use a two-way contract on a high upside guy. I think that's something in the past.
Which is big, yeah.
I mean, there's been times where last year and the year before, I think we left two-way contracts on the table, or we use them on kind of guys that have been in the league like TJ Leaf that didn't make an impact at all. Now, I'm not saying your two-way contracts need to make an impact. They probably are going to end up being like summer league, G League bench fillers. But at the same time, it's nice to see Neil take pot shots and see if we can get somebody who sticks on this roster at 6'9" or 6'10", who's kind of bouncy and has some athleticism.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good.
I mean, that's what it's all about at this point, because chances are when you're trying to appease Dame, you're in win now mode. You're not going to get these guys too much playing time. I doubt you see either of them play.
So a lot of people were talking about trade CJ before the draft, and a lot of people were talking about Ben Simmons trade before the draft. First of all, Philadelphia's asking price for Ben Simmons right now is astronomically stupid. No one's going to pay you that much for that washed piece of junk. The other thing is with CJ, I don't think Neil is going to pull the trigger before tomorrow, because until we get commitment from Norman Powell, we really have no idea what we're going to do at shooting guard. And I don't think you can trade CJ until you have some type of idea of what Norm's going to do. If Norm had signaled to Neil and said, I'm definitely going to sign in Portland for 3 years and whatever, $68 million, then I think Neil would have maybe traded CJ. But until we have his commitment, I don't think the CJ trade is going to happen. Am I off on that, or you get the same read?
No, I think that's great. I think it's a point we haven't heard too much of recently, but that's,
I wasn't.
I mean, at the end of the day, you're not going to get rid of a guy like CJ and then not be able to retain Norman Powell. Now, if you were to trade CJ for a pick, like was discussed, or young players' assets, whatever, then you open up the money to really be able to do a lot of different things. So even if you don't go back out and get Norman Powell, you can probably find somebody else out there to come in and play decent minutes at the shooting guard position. Spencer Dinwiddie's another guy that you could go out and look at. They're out there.
Yeah.
So you could replace Powell with somebody else if you were to trade CJ early. Not to mention you'd obviously open up the money for him. So it's part of it. I wouldn't be surprised, but also I think you're onto something. I would imagine that they want to wait and find out what the roster construction is going to look like. Knowing that you're having Powell coming back kind of lets you know if you want to go out and get a shooting guard in a trade, if you want to go out and get a forward now, because you can still play Powell at the 3. We don't like it, but it's doable.
It's doable.
You know, he's done it most of his career. So it kind of lets you have some flexibility with what you trade CJ for. And I think that's a big deal, which is going to be probably one of the early hour things the Blazers do. My guess is they've already been reaching out to Powell's agents. They've already been talking to them. It is not going to take long for us to know the Powell dilemma and how that's going to get resolved. I would imagine within the first few days, we'll know for sure if he's coming back or not. I could be wrong. I mean, he may just want to test the waters as well, but I think he knows that we can pay him more than anybody. I think he likes Dame. He's got a relationship with some of these guys. Toronto doesn't want him back, so it's kind of he's only played for 2 teams, and if we can bring him back and afford to bring him back, you would think that he'd want to come back and play with somewhere where he's comfortable.
I just don't think he has that high cachet that you look for, in that first wave of superstars. And if Portland's going to give him a fatty deal, why would he stick around and wait for these other guys like Spencer Dinwiddie and Kyle Lowry and Mike Conley? He might as well just take the big money from Portland. We can offer him a massive contract, and he knows that we're going to make the playoffs next year, and he's going to probably start at the 3. I understand that people would say, like, well, if you keep CJ, if you keep CJ, then he's not going to have a role. Yeah, he started last year, and he played like 28 minutes per game. What are you talking about? He's going to have a role no matter what we do, and Neil's going to promise him that when we give him 3 years, $70 million.
Mm-hmm. Nope, agreed. Yep. So with that, I think you're right. I don't think we're going to see a CJ move for a little while.
Perfect.
It just depends on some of the other things that go down. I think early stage free agency will be a big deal. Teams start to fill roles and they start to get players in, which makes other players on their teams expendable, and that's where you start looking for some of the CJ moves, in my opinion. So all that being said, we'll get to free agency in just a moment. I do kind of want to touch on the summer league a little bit because it's not a big draw for a lot of Blazers fans. I like the summer league. I like to see some of these. I do. I like to see some of the rookies. You get to get a kind of an idea of what other teams, young kids. You can watch the draft and the highlights and do some draft research, but it's really good to get to watch them play with other NBA vets, guys trying to make the teams against their peers who they were drafted with in some of the bigger games. And the tournament status is cool, and it's great for them to work with their coaches for the first time, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm a summer league guy. I enjoy it. I like watching the young players. I mean, remember we saw Dame? I mean, he just blew the summer league up. It was super fun to watch. It was cool, and that's where you get a lot of this.
Lonzo Ball went crazy in summer league, and it was one of the first things that turned me on to his. Like, I actually watched him in summer league and was like, okay, I think this guy has skills that I didn't like him in the draft at all, but I think you can see some of those things translate.
Mm-hmm. And you also see some of these guys like Wendell Carter didn't have a good summer league, and he didn't look at his career. I mean, it's been meh. So you see a lot of these like high profile guys as well that sometimes they don't do good in the summer league, and that does translate to the actual league. Not always, but it's a cool thing to watch. So that happens August 8th is when we're going to start the summer league. So it's coming up. So far for Portland, we've already talked about a few of the guys that we're going to be having on the roster. Michael Beasley's the big vet. Another big vet agreed to sign a summer league contract this week, and that was Emmanuel Mudiay.
Yeah,
what do you think of him? I like him a lot, if I'm being honest with you, not just for summer league, but also as a potential replacement point guard, a backup point guard for Portland. He's only 25. He's kind of bounced around a little bit, started off in Denver, but he was in that just carousel of guards that Denver had there, so he didn't get a lot of playing time. He kind of got banged up and cast aside.
Yep.
But I really like him as a fit for Portland in general for a really cheap contract, and it's going to be kind of exciting for me to watch him in the summer league.
Long, athletic defender, really good point of attack guy, and then really good passer too. I don't think he can shoot very well. I think that there's a lot of things that he lacks in his game. But like you said, he's 25. He's 2 years older than some of these guys coming out of college. If you look at the traditional point guard and how long it takes him to develop, he needs to be in the right role and have the right amount of time playing in that role. So if you want him to be our first guard off the bench, I'm fine with that. Anthony Simons is a scoring combo guard, but at the same time, this team needs a defending guard, someone who can come in and stop the best team's opposing guard. So if he's going to sign for, like, let's say vet minimum $1.5–2 million per year, and you're just going to have him as your fourth guard, whatever the order may be. I like it a lot. I think you're going to get to see him play well in summer league. And like you said, he's still young enough to where he's not washed.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was so young. I guess I've heard his name and seen his name around, especially being part of Denver and, obviously with the rivalry that we have there. But to see that he was so young, I'm stoked to see him in summer league because I agree with you. I think he's a good passer. He's much more of a floor general point guard, which I personally think we need. We need a point guard. I don't see Simons as a point guard. I like Simons.
Yep.
But you can combine him with somebody like this to really unlock a lot of his potential. Let him play a lot more off ball, to get more shots for three where he's just standing there waiting for the three to come to him instead of having to create. I think that's going to be beneficial to us all the way around. So whatever, Moutier is one guy. I have a couple other guys in this list that I like for that same type of role that we'll talk about. But yeah, I'm stoked to see him.
I'm down.
Otherwise, I mean, obviously Portland's going to get its first look at Greg Brown. So he'll get in there, and chances are he'll play probably starting power forward, or he'll get a lot of minutes because he's going to be on the actual team. I would imagine Trendon Watford's going to get some run. I don't know how the two-way contract affects summer league. I'll be honest, I didn't research it, but I would imagine that he should be able to go out there and play. His contract may not start to the regular season, so I don't know. I don't know how that'll work out. Otherwise, I mean, you're probably going to see Nasir Little. I haven't seen it confirmed that he's on the summer league roster. He may not now be in a couple of years on the team. But it wouldn't surprise me if they gave him a little bit more run. He's going to have a new coaching staff. It's good to get used to some of these younger guys that you haven't got a lot of film on because they didn't play a lot of minutes. And then I would imagine CJ Ellaby will be a big time summer league. I'm voting for him for my summer league MVP already. I'm ready to see the pro go. You know what I mean?
You can get buckets.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to seeing him out there. Then we have Milton Doyle and Eric McCree, guys. They're vets that really haven't played anywhere. They're summer league guys that you don't ever know about. They're trying to compete to get camp spots and get a chance on a roster. So chances are you won't see much of that, and that's where we're at. So it's obviously not a full roster yet. So they'll be adding some more guys to that list. But that is where we are now, and I know that they're going to be finishing up that pretty soon to get that ball rolling in Vegas.
Well, I'll let you be the summer league guy. I actually got up on Saturday and watched the Olympics when we beat the Czech Republic. So I'll be the Olympics guy, you be the summer league guy, and we can bounce that around for the next 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, chances are. I mean, I'm gonna see another Blazers summer league championship before we get to see a normal Blazers championship. I mean,
you never know.
Just putting that out there.
You never know.
I don't know.
Let me run two scenarios through you before we start free agency, before we start the primer. Let me run two things that happened this week, and I want to get your take on which one you prefer. Number one, there is whispers that Pascal Siakam has become available. First of all, Toronto selected an athletic forward with their 4th overall pick, so that was like one of the big telltale signs. And then the other thing is that just insiders around the league think Pascal's more available. The other thing is today, I heard it today on Twitter that Tobias Harris is secretly being shopped out of Philly. Which one of those two rumors would you prefer, and do you think a CJ trade is possible in either one of those scenarios?
I mean, obviously, you probably prefer Pascal Siakam. We talked about it last week.
Probably.
So I've already touched on him as much as I want to touch on him.
Sure.
But, I mean, yeah, if he becomes available, I know I heard the whispers that even CJ was talked about in those trades. Granted, I don't know how much stock there is in that, but
none.
It was out there. Honestly, I almost like Tobias Harris more, which is weird.
Yeah.
Because I think he's more gettable. Is that a word? I think he's easier to get. I don't think Toronto's going to just do the CJ for Siakam trade. For the same reasons we talked about when we were talking about the draft pick last week, and then even when you brought up the same scenario, they're probably going to bring back Trent. They already have Van Fleet. I just don't see a world where they want to go out and get a 30-year-old player at almost $100 million remaining on his contract in the position where you already have a bunch of money put into and you have locked up. That would mean that they would have to put Trent at the small forward position because I've heard on the street they're going to get ready to bring him back.
Yep.
So he's probably going to play small forward if you do that. He's already played with CJ. We've seen that combination. It wasn't great in Portland. It kind of led to him having to go back and play the reserve role. And again, I just don't think with Van Fleet there and the big contract that he has, I just don't see the room for CJ. So Siakam to me, unless it's a 3-team trade, is not going to happen with Toronto. I just don't see it. Not for CJ. Now, Philly, on the other hand, that's a different story. Now, obviously, the dream there is to get Ben Simmons. If you're a Portland fan, right? That's the one that's been floating around. I'm not a big Simmons guy. I know you're much more of a Simmons guy than I am, but obviously the asking price right now is ridiculous. The chances are Simmons is not going to be the guy. Now, that's probably why you're hearing rumbles about what's his face? Harris. Yeah, because they're going to want to make a move to improve somewhere. And if they can't get what they want back from Simmons, they'll start kind of scaling down. And the next big player that they have that's probably available would be him. So it makes sense if you just think about it from a pure just team standpoint. Like, yeah, we're not getting the superstars that we want back. Let's lower the playing field and so we can get back for Harris. Sure. CJ for Harris, I like, because Harris can immediately slide into the 3 or the 4 for us, which allows Covington to go back and forth between the 3 and the 4. And so your matchups become a little bit better for you defensively because now you can kind of use Covington and you have more size with even Harris out there
so much
than
more
you did
size.
with the 3-guard lineup, right? Perfect. He's also a good scorer, so you're not going to lose offense. When it comes to CJ. Now, so is Siakam, sure. He's a good player.
He's
but
not
Tobias
as versatile.
Yeah, he's not. He doesn't have as good of an outside shot. So there's some other stuff that comes into play. Whereas I wouldn't say Harris is good inside, but I do think Harris would play good with Dame. Contracts match. I'm all for it. I mean, either one of those guys. I think that's the type of player that you have to hope you get back for CJ at this point.
I think so too.
There's another one of those guys that is a fringe all-star. Puts up decent numbers. Not a superstar. You're not going to get back to what you think you're going to get back for CJ at this point. Like, you're probably not getting back to Ben Simmons, is what I'm saying. So when you get down to some of the next level guys and that might be available in trades, I think Tobias Harris should be a tier 1 potential CJ option out of the players that you expect to maybe be able to get back for him.
I'm down with that. I think I agree with you. I think Tobias Harris is much more in the Chris Middleton. He can get his own bucket. He can play from the outside. Pascal really can only play inside. Pascal's a much better defender overall, but it doesn't really matter to me because Tobias Harris is going to give you the length and athleticism to pair with Nurk and Covington, and those two are really going to be your primary defenders. You don't have the size weakness that you used to have. You could play Norm Powell at the 2. That trade would just make Portland so much more competitive, I think, on the defensive end. And then the other thing is, like you said, Tobias can shoot better than Pascal can. Pascal and Nurk don't fit together worth a damn. Like, that's one of the biggest things is if you bring in Pascal Siakam, you pretty much have to figure out what the hell you're going to do with Nurkic because that is not going to work out well. Pascal's going to be running like pick and rolls with Dame probably. Nurk's going to be clogging the lane. It's going to be kind of a weird fit. So I think Tobias Harris may be a better fit for this team than Pascal. Pascal's a better asset because he's younger and he's got more upside. But Tobias Harris is 29 or 30, so he's right on the Dame timeline. He's one of those guys that major casual fans don't know Tobias Harris and they don't know his game, but he's pretty versatile. Yeah,
he was great when he played for the Clippers before he went to Philly in the first place. I agree with you. I do think he'd be a better fit because of the versatility. I think you're right. Siakam and Nurk together clogging up the paint is great. Like, you're going to be able to take advantage of teams and mismatches, which still opens up, Dame and Powell and all these different things on the outside because teams are going to have to throw a lot of help down there. But at the same time, you worry about what it's going to do to the offense. So, yeah, I'm all for Tobias Harris. I think he would be a great asset. Plus, defensively, he's not the best defender, but you also got to remember you're trading CJ away for Powell. So now you get Powell, who for a shooting guard is a little bit longer. Size-wise, he's not like height, but his wingspan is better. He's bigger. He's more athletic. I think it gives you that option on defense, and then you still get to keep Covington and mismatch and Nurk, or not mismatch, but move them around to match up better against opponents depending on what position their best offensive player is, and then you still get Nurk down there. All for it. So, yeah, I love that. I think that's great. I don't know how much stock I'll put in the rumors at this point, but those are things to start watching as we get into the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I'm with it, man. All right. So why don't you give us some of your free agency stuff? Why don't you just kick it off? Tell us what you know about the contracts, what we can and can't do, and then give me some names you like.
Yeah, before we do that, I'll do our favorite segment. This would be a quick one. There's not a lot going on. I know. You get super stoked. You always get stoked when I say it, but you never lead up to it like you're excited. I feel like you don't.
I never know when it's coming. It's always a surprise to me.
That's fair. I do like to keep you on your toes. So this is a quick one. This isn't going to be too long because honestly, I don't know anything about this person. However, I'm going to say it because I think it's a respect thing. So the Blazing New Trails ex-player of the week is Stan McKenzie, who played with Portland their very first year 1970 through 1972. He died recently. He passed away at 77 years young. It's an unfortunate thing for the Blazers community. I didn't dive too much into the research of how he passed away, but he did indeed pass away. So it's just, one of those guys in the original team that there's going to be some fans in here that's going to appreciate that. And there's going to be some fans who read about it on Twitter and they're cool. And there's going to be some fans who are like, I have no idea who that is. Like me, honestly, I don't know much about it, him as a player, but it's still kind of sad to see one of the OGs go down and pass away. And it's cool to remember that we were an expansion team and that only 7 years into the league, we got our first championship. So when you start thinking about some of those things, it's pretty neat. So he obviously was a part of creating that. So that's it. That's my Blazing New Trails Player of the Week. Rest in peace, good old Stan McKenzie. And hopefully he's remembered for good times and being a good player.
Hopefully.
And with that, my friend, now we can go into free agency because free agency is starting. It is starting tomorrow. Yeah. It is the negotiation period. So you're not going to see signings. We have seen very few and rare instances where guys agreed to terms and backed out Draymond Green. So it's possible. I think DeAndre Jordan was another one who did that.
He did.
Who was one that kind of made it a no. I think it was Dallas. I don't remember who he was agreeing to, but he ended up
go to Dallas. Yep.
Yeah, and he backed out. So it happens, but either way, most of the time you start hearing names and agreeing to terms with teams in the next couple of days until they can officially sign it. It's the real thing. Most of them are going where they say they're going. Probably all of them. So that kind of breaks it down to the needs of Portland. Yep. And so before I get into the needs of Portland, let's we know who our starters are. Let's assume we're not trading CJ like we've done all of our assumptions. I'm also assuming that we're bringing back Norman Powell when I start talking about these names.
I'm down.
He's the number one target. We can pay him more than anybody. We've already beat this dead horse. Is that the term? I don't like saying dead horse. That's sad for horses, but we've already talked about this plenty. I'm done with the Norman Powell. We know that he's number one option. He's going to probably come back. So I'm going to treat this as I expect him to come back. Okay. That brings the guys that are under contract. That brings up Derek Jones Jr., who, as we previously discussed, opted in. Obviously, Anthony Simons, Nasir Little coming into their third and fourth years. Greg Brown, who we just drafted. And then CJ Ellaby, who we drafted last year. So those are the guys that we have right now. You could call Ellaby a point guard, I guess. Simons is a combo guard who kind of plays a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Little and Brown are probably power forward, small forward hybrids. Just one of those athletic guards. And then obviously Derek Jones is in the same exact boat as those guys. More of a shooting guards, probably small forward is his legitimate fit. So
big wing, sure.
Now, is there anything about those guys that I just listed that you notice right off the bat with the contract situations on the team right now?
The only thing I would say is I think that our biggest weakness is backup point guard, so someone who can run the offense when we need someone to run the offense. And then the other thing is I think backup center has to be addressed. I'm fine with playing Nasir Little. I'm fine with playing Derek Jones. I'm fine with playing either of them in the Melo minutes this year that Melo got. I think Melo's already getting drummed up to go to either New York or LA. He's getting attention from some of the bigger teams, which I'm totally fine with. Melo, go play some legacy minutes for the Lakers and try to ring chase. That's fine. But those two positions to me, backup point guard and backup center. And when I say backup center, I mean a rim protector. Those two things to me are what was lacking in this year's playoff run. And I think if we're going to make a deep run, we need those two things. Do you disagree with that at all?
Absolutely not. That was the one thing that I wanted you to notice, and you did a great job. When I list those guys off, center is the one thing we don't have. We had Cantor last year. Yeah. He's gone. We had Collins, never got to play. He's gone.
The year before. Yeah.
Right. So all these guys that were recently under contract or that we brought them back were short-term deals. They're gone. Okay. So he can't. We tried the Cantor experiment. When he came in, you had a really good post-scoring center and a really, really elite rebounding center, which should have been fine, except you paired him with Melo, obviously, who those two defensively together couldn't stop anybody. And here's the thing with Cantor. There's a lot of people that complain about drop center and putting them back to the rim and et cetera, et cetera. Have you seen Cantor try to guard on the perimeter? It's bad. You have to do that. You have to get him down there because you need some size. And if he gets burnt, which he often does, guys are getting around him too fast. He didn't have the footwork and the speed to get back and help. And even when he was down low, he was continuously getting bodied and bullied by guys that were bigger than him. He was a liability on the defensive side that just unfortunately didn't outweigh the outstanding rebounding that he did and the offensive output that he had here and there. And there were plenty of games where he did that, and it probably won us some games or kept us in games a lot longer than we probably deserved to be, because he would get offensive rebounds and putbacks during shooting lulls that really kind of kept scores manageable. Sure. He did it a couple times even in the playoffs for us. I mean, the Denver game, that overtime game, the 2 overtime game, he got the only 2 points outside of Dame, which is sad. And it was on a putback that helped force that second overtime to begin with. So, but it's not what we need. I agree with you. It is not, unfortunately, what we need, especially if you're going to play Little at the power forward. You know, he's not a defensive juggernaut. He's athletic and showed some flashes, but he still seemed to be out of position. He still seemed to not really understand how to read an opponent and be able to play the kind of defense you need to play. So having a guy down low, to me, it's priority number 1 in Portland. Yep. Even more so than a point guard, which I agree with you. We've been talking about it for years, but I do think that priority number 1 is having that backup center role. Nurk gets into foul trouble. He's obviously been hurt the last couple of years. You just can't trust Nurk to stay on the court. I love Nurk. I love what he brings to the team, but he can't trust him to be out there long enough minutes to not have a very viable veteran backup.
Well, and the other thing is, and I think about this a lot. I thought about this a lot last year. One of the things I didn't like about Stotts is we didn't go small very often. And when we did go small, it wasn't a lineup that could run. So one of the things you want to see with Derrick Jones Jr., Greg Brown, Norman Powell, these guys can get out in transition. Well, Nurkic and Kanter can't, and Melo didn't get out in transition ever. So this year, I'd like to see us kind of counter that a little bit and get to a team that can run transition, defense, and offense. So I would like to see a center that can run a little bit more. And I know that's hard to find when you're talking about a 7-foot guy. Zach Collins probably could have fit that mold a little more. And it's not Neil's fault that he could not stay healthy. That was just a really unfortunate situation. But I mean, give me some names that you'd like to hear on a cheap deal for the Blazers to play the backup 5.
And that's the other thing that we want to discuss. Blazers only have a couple options. We have the MLE. However, we don't have the full MLE because of the hard cap. We only have about $5 to $6 million to spend on that. It's like 5.6. I don't remember the exact number, but we have the biannual, which is 3.7, and then we have just vet mins at that point. So to me, the MLE's got to go to the center. I know it seems weird, but I would rather pay the biggest point of emphasis for this team on free agency, and I would use the most money to do it. I know there's a lot of centers that you might be able to get on a minimum deal. But if I'm looking at the MLE right now, some names that come in is Nerlens Noel. He's my top target is Nerlens Noel. Yeah. I really like Daniel Theis. Theis. Because he's proven to be a very good defensive center. Yeah. He's still pretty young and athletic. And then honestly, I don't see this happening because I think he'll get a little bit more money, but he's also a center. And he's one of those centers that's kind of right in this threshold. And that's Mitchell Robinson from New York, who is available. So Nerlens Noel and Mitchell Robinson out of New York are both available. Chances are New York brings one or both of those guys back. Yeah. Noel is my top target at this point for the centers. I think the defensive abilities that he has, you want to talk about a guy who can run. He's pretty young and athletic still. Yes. He was part of the reason that New York was one of the top defenses in the league last year because he gave them those bench minutes and started at times.
He's legit.
And really held down the fort and anchored that team down low. So yeah, I would say that those guys are my top guys. I also put down Dwayne Dedmon, who I really like and have liked for a long time. Gorgie Jang. Yep. I don't know how to say his name. And then Bismack Biyombo are just veteran backups that have been backups in this league for a long time and have been great on their teams.
Yep. Yeah, I could see them being minimum guys. I think the only other – I love all those names. I agree with you on Bismack Biyombo. I agree with you on Mitchell Robinson. I really like them. I would be okay with Richaun Holmes. Richaun Holmes isn't as good of a rim protector, but he's probably better on the offensive end, and he's got a good two-way game.
I just think he's going to get outpriced. I just think his performance last year.
He could.
I think he's going to get closer to 10 mil.
Yep, he could. The other names, I think you hit them all. I really don't think Kaminsky's a guy that you look at. He just doesn't have the rim protection. Boban, he's a good rim protector, but he just is so limited offensively.
I'd buy his jersey over Boban.
JaVale McGee is a guy who's really old and kind of limited. I think Nerlens Noel. I agree with you. It also depends. If you're looking at like It depends on if it's the MLE or if they're going with a biannual. But if it's going to be a vet min, then I agree with you. I would like to see Tice. I like Tice a lot. I think Tice could do a lot for us, but on both ends of the floor as a backup center. So I'm good with any of those as long as it's not Cantor, and as long as I think you got to let Melo walk, man. You just got to let him take a contract somewhere else. You cannot re-sign him to this team.
Sure. Do you think about some of the returning guys? Not returning guys, but ex-players. What about Whiteside, Robin Lopez? Any of them tickle your fancy?
I would do
Yeah,
Ed Davis. I mean, I'm cool with Ed Davis on a veteran minimum. He's looked okay in stints on other teams. But no, I'm good on the rest of those. I don't think there's another center name that I like. Malik Monk got cut today. He would not fit with the Blazers at all. He's going to command a decent
He's
deal.
definitely a terrible center as well.
Oh, what are you talking about? Malik Monk's like 6'5". I'm sure he could play center. There's no problem. Alex Caruso could play center for the Blazers.
If you look at the roster that we had last year with 3-6-3 guards, I mean, he basically would play center for us.
No, I'm out on Whiteside. They can't bring him back. And then I think I mentioned the other name, like Kaminsky. You can't bring him in. Harry Giles is listed. Harry Giles is listed as a center. Would you be okay if we signed Harry Giles to a 2-year veteran minimum?
No, I don't want Giles back. I'm done with it. We have enough athletic projects. I'm good.
That's fine.
What about Dwight Howard? At this point, see, here's my thing. At this point, I want a guy who's been around for a little while because I think you're in the era with Dame where you need to have vets around him.
Yeah. It's funny you said that because I was literally looking at this list of names and I was looking at all these young guys, and really, honestly, I would prefer like an Otto Porter Jr. or JaMychal Green or PJ Tucker. I think the Blazers need a vet who's been on a championship level team to come in here and hold some of these young guys like Derrick Jones Jr. and Greg Brown accountable. So to me, it's funny that you say that, but literally, as I'm looking through this list, I thought the exact same thing you did, which is I think I'd rather us sign Andre Iguodala or someone. I don't care if they're old and I don't care if they can't. I mean, I get that Melo is in that archetype too, but I want someone who's been on championship level teams who can come in here and say, this is why I won it in 2017 with Golden State, because we were willing to sacrifice A, B, and C. I would prefer those guys over a young project, right?
That's fair. I mean, you're jumping a little further than me. I was kind of going through position to position, and you've gotten into my wing list, but that's okay.
You're good.
I'm all about the buy one get one wings.
Buy one get one.
So I'm all good for that. We have enough wings, in my opinion. I don't need any more wings on this team. I do think a power forward is another role that I would like to fill, and one of my favorite names on this list, who, quite frankly, if you can get him on a cheap deal, which it might be kind of tough, although he's been banged up the last few years, he hasn't really put his name out there as much as, earlier in his career, he was kind of a hot commodity, and lately he's kind of fallen off. He's fallen off to the point where I think maybe you can get him on the cheaper side, is Lauri Markkanen. I love me some Lauri, whatever his name is. I love the stretch four potential that he has. The guy can shoot the lights out from three. He also is actually a pretty good defender. If you watch him, his defensive stats are not terrible. Again, he's a true power forward.
Yes.
So he gives me a lot of. This is I'm not even going to say that. Never mind. I'm not going to say what I was going to say, but he gives me a lot of. No, he's not as good of a rebounder. I was going to say Dirk Nowitzki. I think they're both European. Okay. I can't. No, I can't do that. Stop it.
Sure.
Don't let me do that. I'll switch more to the Myers Leonard, Kelly Olynyk territory. Some of these bigger stretch fours that have been around, but I love him. I would start Lauri Markkanen next to Rocco and Norman Powell if we were to get rid of CJ in a flash. But when it comes to the bench role, I think he gives you a lot of offensive scoring on your bench, especially if you can go get a center like Jing or Biyombo for cheap, and then you go and give your MLE to a guy like Markkanen. I'm all for it. Yeah. Another name, which is probably going to be outpriced, as you said it already, is JaMychal Green. He was a hustle guy. It was one of the big reasons we lost to Denver. I know people want to sit here and say that Denver was worse than us and we were so much better than Denver, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. A big reason we lost that series is because our bench was nowhere near their bench. I'm unfortunately sorry, everybody. It wasn't. Millsap, Green, Morris, they kicked our butts. Yep. Green is one of those hustle double potential guys with Memphis and then Denver the last couple of years. I would kill to have him be our backup power forward. Okay. Again, getting one of these couple guys here allows you to go in and use a vet min on one of these other centers that come in to be a defensive-minded center when you still get a lot of potential scoring options out of your power forward position. You get more hustle, you get more youth, you get everything that's anti-Carmelo Anthony. And no disrespect to him, but that was a problem for us the last couple years.
I'm with you.
So those are the two guys
Jeff
that
Green? Would you take Jeff Green?
Kind of where, Yeah, and that's where I'm going with the rest of these guys. I kind of
Okay.
have some now. If you go out and you get a guy like Noel and you use some bigger money on your center,
Uh-huh.
now power forward is kind of you can't afford to spend that much money. That's where the guys like I have Ibaka on my list. I don't know if the Clippers will bring him back. I would take
No.
him at this point in his career as a defensive-minded power forward, backup
Yes.
roles. Taj
Stretch.
Gibson is a name I really like.
Sure.
Love me some Taj Gibson. Again, younger guy. He's kind of in the mid-peak of his career now. He's going to be cheap, but he gives you everything that you would want out of your backup power forward position.
Yeah.
And then one of my favorite names, again, that keeps coming up that I really wanted for a few years now is Paul Millsap. And again, we're talking 15 minutes a game, 20 minutes a game. I'm not sitting here saying this guy has to come out and play big minutes, but I love the veteran presence that he gives you. We seem to always get stuck playing Denver in the playoffs. He can give you inside knowledge there because Lord knows we need it. But quite frankly, he can shoot the three. I know it's down, especially last year. It wasn't where it normally is. He still has the ability to drive. He's a great passer for a big guy. We watched it over and over in that series against us. So I think he does a lot for you from a veteran standpoint as far as power forward goes if you can get him in there to play 15, 20 minutes a game. And most of these guys that I name, I'm expecting only play about 15, 20 minutes a game. So those are kind of the bigs. Those are the bigs that I have listed for you. I know you got some more to say on that. So what do you think about that, and who else you have listed there? I know you said Jeff Green and some of those names, which I like.
Yeah, Jeff Green, JaMychal Green. I like both of them, power forwards.
You like greens, is what you're saying.
I do. I like the color green. It's my favorite. If I'm gonna be honest with you, and I'll kick you a couple other names, I really like Biyombo. I think Biyombo would be a great backup to Nurk. I think that Biyombo should be one of our main targets for a really cheap guy who nobody's gonna like target early on. The other names that I would kick you, I'm going. I mean, there's guys that are already going to be priced out of Portland's market. When you look at Jared Allen, Jared Allen's amazing. He's not going to come.
I didn't even count him on my list.
John Collins would be amazing, but he's not going to come here. So let me kick you two other names really quick, and I just want your opinion on this. Okay, they're fairly young. They both have been on multiple teams, and they both have kind of flamed out for multiple reasons. Number one, Stanley Johnson is a small forward who's been on a couple teams. He was on Toronto last year. Stanley Johnson's a good defender, but he's kind of struggled offensively. And then the other name is Justice Winslow. Justice Winslow became a free agent. Both of them are small forwards. They both would give you the length and athleticism that you would look for as the Blazers, and they both are kind of around that 25 to 27 years old where they've been in the league. Neither one, you don't want to
I don't like either of them. So here's my thing. All right. And I know this is going to upset some fans.
Sure.
Probably. I just don't see
how they raise your ceiling.
I don't see wings being a priority right now.
That makes sense.
Only because Jones opted in. When you sit here and you think, so we're operating under the assumption that we're not trading CJ. We stated that at the very beginning of this conversation.
And Powell resigned, so we have guards.
And Powell's coming back. So Powell's your small forward.
Yep.
In the system. You already have Robert Covington. Okay. You can count him as a wing. He's a 3-and-D. He's going to play power forward most likely in this imaginary assumed lineup that we're going to have, but that's where we are with it. So then you have Derek Jones on your bench. You have now Greg Brown.
Yep.
And you have Nasir Little, who I think is going to get a big run this year. This is it. This is Nasir Little's year to show us that he belongs on this team. Yeah. So when I look at Jones and Little, I think, okay, the small forward role is pretty much done. That's why I focus my attention on center and power forwards that aren't going to be wing power forwards. They're a little bit more size because that rebounding and some of the stuff you're going to get from these bigger guys, whereas these other two are going to be your defensive perimeter guys. Your athleticism. And I just think having both of those guys, now obviously you trade away Jones, that's when you start looking at some of these other names. I put down like Trevor Ariza coming back to Portland. Yep. I would like him.
Too.
I put down Nicholas Batum coming back to Portland.
Yeah,
Iggy just got cut.
Yep.
And when I made my list, Iggy had just gotten cut today. So Iggy's another guy, 15 minutes a game, go lock up their best bench scorer for a while.
Do it.
Torrey Craig is one of our favorite names, both of us. You and me had dreams of having Carmelo Anthony and Torrey Craig out on this court at the same time so that we could have Craig and Anthony out on the court at the same time. If we were to get Torrey Craig, I would pray that we bring. You've mentioned. I know you thought it.
That's funny.
I put down Mo Harkless. I put down Rudy Gay, another vet guy that I think is going to be a little bit cheaper. These are all guys that I thought about, and I was sitting there thinking, they would be great to have in Portland because you're going to get offensive scoring with a lot of these guys. You're going to get defensive versatility, and then I just kind of kept going back to we have these guys already on the roster. They're not vets by any means, but they're there. And I'd rather focus on getting that backup power forward role. Now you could say Rudy Gay and Trevor Ariza, and these guys could come in and play power forward. You could go small with backup bench. Little and Jones both play together out there as a four. You can do that. I just think they're already there. So I didn't focus too much attention on them. I didn't really focus much attention on shooting guard because I think Anthony Simons has that locked up, in my opinion. And then I think Jones will kind of alternate with him here and there. And you already have CJ and Powell. So depending on matchups, fouls, things like that, you're going to have different coverage on your shooting guard position for now. I also think that CJ Ellaby is big enough to go out there and play a little shooting guard if you need it. So I really focused on point guard as my next position of need. You called it out in the beginning of this conversation. I'm right there with you, 100% agree. That is kind of where I went. And I'm in the same mindset as you. I think we need more of a floor general. We don't need a guy that's going to come out and get 15, 20 points a night. We don't need a guy that's going to even get 10 to 15 points a night at this point. That's what Anthony's for. That's why he's there, is to be your scoring guard off the bench. That is his role on this team, or it should be.
I agree.
So that kind of brought me to some other guys, and I know we talked about him a little bit. Number one on my list was probably at this point Patty Mills. I love Patty because I think he's just been in the league forever. I think he's super smart. He's been on those Spurs teams for a while that now is going young, so he's available. He can shoot great from the three. He's a great assist guy, and he's a good defender. He's a gnat. He's pesky. And then TJ McConnell was another one that I really liked. And that was actually one that you brought up at the beginning before we started recording.
I like him.
That you noticed as well. And again, triple-double threat type of guy that can kind of come in and do a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. But he's been better at doing a little bit of everything than some of the other guys that we've brought in the last few years.
Yeah. I think TJ McConnell would fit fantastically as the backup point guard on this team. I like Patty Mills for his experience. I also think, so if I'm thinking realistically, I'm thinking veteran minimum. There's two guys that come to mind for me on this list. I think Corey Joseph is a guy who could be had on the vet minimum. He's been on several winning teams. He was with Detroit last year, but he's been on the Kings. He's been with Toronto. He's been on multiple teams, and Corey Joseph would take, in my opinion, a vet min. He would be a really cheap Seth Curry to me. He can kind of do it all. He's not a great defender. Seth is a better defender than him. The other one that jumps out to me, this is a Neil special, Dante Exum would be a very cheap reclamation project. You could take Dante Exum on and you could basically say, like, he's long, he's a point of attack defender. He's kind of like Moutier. If you think that Dante Exum can learn how to shoot and be a better floor general, the other name that I want to kick your way is a guy who we kind of like, Ish Smith. I think Ish Smith could be a guy who you sign for like a vet min. Is that a guy you'd bring on?
I love him. He's an assist machine. He's very good at reading the floor. He's very good at getting guys into position to score. When you start looking at, right, and exactly, he's been a point guard forever, a backup point guard forever, and a lot of good teams with a lot of guys. And he's a guy that comes in when somebody gets hurt, and he's a very viable starter if you're in that situation. But for me, having a guy that can get 7-9 assists from your bench spot is ridiculous. He's a great assist guy. And when you start running out Simons and Jones and Little, and you talk about wanting to push the pace and really trying to unlock the potential if you keep these guys in this team, well, there's no better point guard for you than a guy like Ish Smith that's going to come in here and just get assist, and be able to hit those cutters and hit these guys, for outside shots. When Little and Simons both have improved their three-point shot. And this is a guy that I think can unlock it. Defensively, he's not amazing. He is a little bit smaller, but I just think he can run the offense and calm things down. Sometimes with those bench situations, you have a guy like Simons who just decision-making got better for sure as the year went on. We both talked about that and gave him mad respect for it. But I think Ish Smith can come in right away and lead that and make sure games are under control until Dame comes back in or CJ comes back in and is able to get that scoring back up. So love that. Burks is another name that's out there that I kind of like. I think Burks will end up being outpriced. I think his time in New York was kind of up and down, but I think that he'll probably get outpriced outside of Portland, and I wouldn't want to use the full MLE on him, but he's a scoring combo guard. I just think he's a little too similar to Simons, and I think Simons has more potential. But that's another guy that I kind of saw on that list. And then the last one that I kind of noticed that I wasn't so mad at is Cameron Payne in Phoenix, coming out of Phoenix. They kind of have some other guys there that they like. I think, again, they'll probably bring him back, but if he were to hit the market, that's a guy that's played under Chris Paul now. He's a guy that's got some big-time playing minutes on a championship caliber team that I would like to pair up near Simons and have a pretty good youth backcourt off the bench.
I like Raul Neto. You've probably seen him. He's a smaller guard. I actually wouldn't mind taking a shot on Elfrid Payton or Frank Ntilikina. I think both of them are the same guy, which is basically like you can't shoot. But this team's weakness will forever be point of attack defense. And I think you just got to get a guy who can come in and stabilize the defense and do enough on offense to run the floor and be a floor general. So I'd be good with either one of them. And one of them would be cheap. They both are coming out of New York over the last few years. And I don't think New York can afford to keep either one of them. They're both going to be really cheap because their shooting is so porous that other teams are not really going to want to take a shot on them. And that pretty much does it for point guard. Like, if you want to talk me into Dennis Smith Jr., you can, but I'm good. If you want to talk me into, I mean, like, yeah, okay, I'm like good on the rest of these. But I think that Mudiay could fill that spot too and be just fine.
Yeah, I love it. Was, he's one of those guys talked about in the summer league that we're going to get a little exposure for.
Yep.
But those, I think, center, power forward, and point guard are my three things that I really want to focus on right off the bat. If I'm being honest with you, I just don't think we need. There's been people that come out and say we do need wings, and you can never have enough wings. But it really depends on the type of trade you make, because if you're trading CJ away like everybody wants, then you're probably getting a forward back in that deal. Chances are.
Yep.
And I just think with Jones opting back in and having Little, who I would love to see continue to be a piece of the team, I just don't see where you get the room for it. I just don't. Like, I mean, Trevor Ariza, Craig, all these veteran guys. Don't look at me when I say Craig. I'm a Torrey Craig.
No, you're good. You're good.
All these guys, like, I'm fine with.
Yeah.
Otto Porter is a guy that maybe you can convince to come here with the mid-level, but I think he's going to get outpriced. I think there's not too many small forwards on the market right now.
No.
So some of these other guys that probably don't deserve some of the money they're going to get shorter deals with a little bit more money on some of these other teams that can afford to pay him. Like, I can see Otto Porter going to New York and things like that now, and them giving him 15 mil for a year or two with a player option, what have you. So those are some of the names that I've come across. I'm interested to see what we do. I do think backup center and point guard are going to be Neil's point of emphasis. I think you're going to see some of these guys get dealt with after some of the dust settles and after they deal with the Norman Powell situation.
Yeah. I didn't realize that Dwayne Dedman and Khem Birch, both are bigs, that they're both unrestricted. I would be super happy with Khem Birch or Dwayne Dedman. Both of them kind of do everything on both ends. Other than that, man, I don't have a lot. I mean, as far as like, I agree with you. I don't think wing is going to be a high priority. And the thing is, most of these wings are big name guys who are going to price us out. Like, when I'm looking at this, if we're looking at this list, I would prefer a more defensive guy. What would you think about Bjelica? How would you feel if Portland signed him to a vet minimum? He's a power forward.
I don't mind it because I think he's going to play more of a power forward role for us. He's a good shooting big. He's going to be able to stretch the floor, hustle guy, who's not going to blow you away with anything, but his motor is pretty high.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I also still really like Torrey Craig. I think Torrey Craig is one of those guys that you can come in here, just like Iguodala. You can throw on the team's best bench scorer. No more are we getting beat by a guy like Monte Morris over here against Denver, right? You can slow them down a little bit, which in the West especially, no matter, it doesn't matter if you're the West or the East, but when you're playing against some of these teams now, like the Lakers are getting all these cheap guys to come in and do vet minimums, but they're like borderline previous All-Stars, and you get freaking what's-his-face, Reggie Jackson for $2 million. You're going to need some of these defensive stopping guys with length, and that's where having Jones should help, even though you know
Jones is supposed to be.
But I wouldn't mind having another one of those guys. If you can get a Mo Harkless or somebody on the cheap to kind of come in and be there in case you need them, I'd rather do it at this point surrounding Dame with vets on this team than I would the young guys. I'm sorry, but I would even rather trade this year Little if it gets you back a guy that can come in with some veteran experience, because Dame's window is closing, and I'd rather have these guys that I know what they've done in the last couple of years. I know what they've brought into the teams that they've been on, if they've been good teams and good situations, and I'd rather fill Dame up with those guys on the roster.
Yeah, Torrey Craig is so limited offensively, but he's so good defensively. He's been on many playoff teams. Okay, so the three names, if you're talking Torrey Craig to me, like Garrett Temple is kind of like that. I would take him. There was another name that I was really Avery Bradley is a guy who could be a veteran minimum, who's been on multiple teams. He's getting up there in age, and he's definitely limited offensively too, but he's another guy. I think Alec Burks could be had on the right deal, and he's good on both sides, but he's better offensively. I think Alec Burks could be a 6th man of the year type player for us. And you mentioned him earlier, but I think he's a guy that you could try to get on the vet minimum. He's been on several teams, Utah, New York, a couple things like that. So I would like to see him. Also, he would give us depth if the CJ trade goes down at shooting guard, for more of that combo guard to come in and get some buckets. So
Okay. So right now, before we go, I want to hear the number one guy you want to sign. Number one. All the it doesn't. If we named him, great. If we haven't named him, I don't care. Number one realistic free agent on the top of your list. Go.
Number one, Nerlens Noel would fix so many of the
Yeah.
problems on this team. I think that I totally understand that he is not going to do a lot for you offensively. He's going to be a rim runner, and nobody on this team can pass to rim runners that well. But to me, Nerlens Noel defensively, he would anchor that second unit. He would help the young guys a lot, and he's been on several teams, so he's got the experience. To me, Nerlens Noel is the dream scenario once you re-sign Powell because you'll have so much shooting to surround him with. He could just be really ugly, muck it up. He's number one for me. What about you?
Lauri Markkanen, definitely my number
Okay.
one guy. Just because I think he can be a borderline starter. I think he's one of those guys that if you get him to come off the bench, you immediately have one of the best big men coming off the bench in the league.
Yeah.
And if you do run into injuries or you do decide to trade CJ for whatever and you run out Powell and Rocco at the 3,
Yeah.
I think he can slide up to a stretch 4, which fits with Nurk so much better.
He's
It
great
gives
there.
us more shooting on the outside, and he's still a good rebounder, can do post scoring. He does a little bit of everything, and I think he's gettable because of his last couple of years, which is the risk. But that's also why you don't overpay to get him.
Well,
He's
yeah,
been injured, he's been banged up, and he's kind of been one of those guys that hasn't produced the way they want. But the Bulls have obviously decided it's okay to move on from him. He's been hard to get. I would say him is my number one guy.
okay. I think you're going to see Neil take one big swing. That big swing is going to be at a guy like, I mean, I could see Markkanen being a fit here. We haven't had a good run with stretch fours, but I mean, it's not really our fault that hasn't worked out. The other thing I want to ask you about is Kevin Love real quick. Is he going to get traded or is he stuck on Cleveland? Because I feel like Kevin Love is like a better version of Lauri Markkanen.
At this point, Cleveland's going to have to just buy him out. It's getting to that point where they're going to have to eat. I know they've already been eating way too much food. I mean, when you think about the Drummond stuff, and they have their stomachs are full from all the contracts that they're just eating. But I don't think they're trading that. He's getting too old. That's too much money. There's not. I mean, the team that would make that kind of move is a contender, and most of these contenders aren't going to need or want Kevin Love. So it's just not feasible to me. I just don't see like maybe Phoenix decides to look into him to come in and play like a stretch four next to
See that?
I'm trying to think of like champion teams that are up there right now in contention that could really use somebody like him. I mean, maybe Philly if they were to get rid of Tobias Harris and they wanted to put him next to Embiid. I don't know. But yeah, if he were to get bought out, I would love to have him. We've already talked about this. I'd love to have him back in Portland. I think he'd be an immediate upgrade on the bench from the big. Same with Lauri Markkanen. They're both the same type of thing to me. Can stretch the floor. They're only going to have to give you 20 minutes. Like, it's not going to be crazy. I think Markkanen's faster and younger than what Melo was, but he can give you that same type of a role where he can come out and get you 15, 16, 17 points a game pretty consistently, rebound pretty well, and do everything that you need him to do in that time frame. So
yeah, and I mean, just to put a sort of cap on it, last year we weren't a very good defensive team, and I understand everybody wants to address the defense by going out here and signing a bunch of defenders. But here's the problem: we're gonna let Melo and Cantor walk most likely. The starting lineup, the starting five, if they re-sign, so if Norm comes back and he and Nurk are playing alongside Rocco, CJ, and Dame, that starting five was really good defensively. So now you're looking at filling out the bench with pieces that you need. You need a rim protecting center. You need an offensive minded point guard who can run the offense, not just a combo guard. So to us, that makes the most sense. I understand that you want to go out there and sign a bunch of defensive wings like Otto Porter. You want to try to get guys like that who are going to be good on both ends of the floor. But I think the CJ trade is going to net someone like that, most likely, a Tobias Harris type. So I think we should address it by getting the other positions. That's where I'm at, and that's where I stand, and I hope everything goes our way.
Right. And again, we're operating under the assumption that the roster's not changing. I think that there's going to be trades. I hope there is. But obviously, when you're operating under the same assumption right now, I mean, it's easy to come out and say, oh, yeah, well, if you get Otto Porter, now you can trade, Derek Jones' expiring contract. Yeah, but we're pretending we're not doing that because we have to work with what we have. And that stuff opens up, later in the year. That's where you go out and get the Iguodalas and the Batums, and they become available halfway through the year, or you need to fill a role and they're free agents still because nobody wanted to sign them, whatever the case is. So we'll see. But yeah, that's kind of where my head's at with things right now.
Cool.
I think we're on the same page. I've read a lot. I think it seems like the Blazers are going to be in that same mindset. So the next couple of days, I think after Powell's taken care of, I think you're going to see center be addressed, and then I can honestly see backup guard. And they may still go after some of the wings as well. Who knows?
Yeah, and yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's going to be exciting to watch no matter what. The only other thing I really wanted to call out is fan of the week. We got actually a new person, a guy named Andre. He said, first time listening, I enjoyed the conversation. See you
Yeah,
next
man.
week. So,
Appreciate it.
Andre, you're the fan of the week for us for Rip
Fan of the
City
week.
Real Talk. We appreciate you.
Yeah, at this point, it doesn't take much. Just comment and engage with us. We love it. So we
We do.
appreciate it, man. The feedback. Share with your friends. We love that you guys are watching us. We're getting a little bigger here and there, but really
Yeah.
we're just doing this, as a fun thing to engage with fans that are on the casual level that, just like to get the updates from somebody with hopefully a good conversational piece that we do. And we enjoy supporting and talking to you guys with all the different things and opinions that we have as fans. So
And just like that, go Blazers. Let's hope Neil can deliver a good offseason here.
that was pathetic. I don't even want to hear you say go Blazers ever again. That sounded like
Go Blazers with that mid-level exception. We know you can do it.
That's very true. All right. Well, Rip City Real Talk is out. Thank you again, everybody. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week with all the amazing. We're gonna have Kyle Lowry and Kawhi Leonard and
Kawhi.
Chris Paul's gonna sign with us. We're gonna have all sorts of fun. DeRozan's probably coming in on a vet min. We're excited to be able to share every top free agent that you know of on this team next week. So talk to you then.
We out.